about today, guys, is breaking down some weight training for athletes specifically. And what we're going to discuss is the beginnings of Olympic lifting or Ollie lifting. We're going to start with the simplest movement and the one that's going to have the most benefit for your athletes, and that's going to be power clean. Power position, power clean, all this denotes is that I'm not breaking my hips past this 45-degree angle, right? This is called the power position, because if you look at what athletes use, if I jump, right, it's coming from this position. If I'm running, hip flexion, hip extension is roughly in that same range of motion. So what we do when we coach athletes, when we train them with weights, we're training for explosivity, we're going to load and decelerate in that position. This is the easiest lift to learn, the easiest introduction into Olympic lifting, just because you're not having to receive the weight and catch it super low. We're not worried about the athlete keeping his balance in a low squat, and we're not getting the weight over his head yet. We don't have to worry about dropping it. I'm going to start off with 135 pounds today. This is, in the grand scheme of things, pretty lightweight. I always suggest just starting off with just the bar, learning the movement, adding slowly. The bar weighs 45 pounds or 20 kilos, right? If you're just starting with this, that's plenty, trust me. I do suggest using the bumper plates because we're being dynamic with the weights. If you end up dropping it, we don't want to damage the floor. Moving on beyond that, I'm going to start off with the footwork here. We're always going to stay in an athletic stance, and what that means is my heels are underneath my shoulders, right? I don't want to be overly wide out here catching, because my knees are always going to have to go to the outsides of my feet anyway. The wider my stance is, the more I'm going to have to put my knees out, and that could end up being a problem with flexibility. After that, after stance, we're going to move up into grip, right? If you want to bring the camera in here real quick, I want to talk about what's called a hook grip. Go ahead and start your Olympic movements with the hook grip. And what this means, if we look at the bar here, we have these two lines, right? And this is to denote where your clean grip is and where your snatch grip is. The way the hook grip looks, and I'm going to do it on this side of the bar, even though when I lift, it's going to be on this side. The way the hook grip looks is I'm going to lock my thumb underneath my fingers this way. This does two things. One, it helps strengthen my grip. Two, what this does is it helps pronate my elbows, right? So my elbows are going to be out. And this is going to be lead into something that I'm going to talk about later, and that's one of the classic mistakes I see in this lift, and that's when we turn it into a big fat curl out here. Right? If we keep our elbows out, right, the bar is going to travel nice and close up to our body, so we have a straighter bar path. After that, you'll notice when I step away from the pins, or from these JPEGs right here, with the bar, that I'm going to load up my traps. I want to keep this movement in the big muscles, right? It's a lot of weight. I want to train the heavy weights with the bigger muscles. And that's one of the other reasons why we're not trying to get into this curl kind of thing. Beyond that, I'll go ahead and perform about 3 to 5 of them here real quick. And we'll rack the bar again, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it. All right, I'm going to tuck my shirt in a little bit here too, so you can see kind of what's going on with my hips. When we talk about kinetically, this lift, performing it, we want to make sure that we're driving with our legs first, right? When we talk about timing in sports, this is something you hear a lot. All this means is kinetically, the right joints fire before the other ones do. Right? If we look at the cross-section of muscle I have from here to here, as opposed to any other cross-section of my body, this is where anybody's going to be the thickest. That's where I want to start the movement. So I'm going to go ahead and use my hook grip. Right? I'm going to use these lines here on the bar to denote where I want to grab it. Right? I'm going to take my step back. Notice I already have the bar positioned up into my traps. I'm going to load my hips, fire forward, and then I'm going to catch. Right, at 135 pounds, right, we're not going to drop the weight yet. Right, here's another one. I'm going to load my hips, right, hips fire. And I get right underneath the weight. Notice I'm not cranking my head back. I'm keeping my spine nice and straight, right? You want to add the next degree of complexity to it. I want to have a foot drive, so it sounds like this. So here you can hear my feet hit the ground at the same time. When we do repetitions with these, this isn't CrossFit. I'm not looking to do 10, 20 repetitions. This is a speed-based movement, 3 to 5. That's all we need. Take your 3 to 5 minutes rest after that. Come back and get your next set in. We're not looking to fatigue or go into failure with these at all. At that point, we're not training speed anymore. we moved into a different energy system. You're going to notice that this is a really complex movement. There's a lot going on, right? And that's another reason that we like to train this as far as athletic coaches. It's multi-kinetic, right? You use a lot of different joints here. So I'm going to go over some of the mistakes that you'll get into right off the bat. Starting from the ground up, number one, you'll notice after your pull, right, you'll get underneath the weight. A lot of people tend to step out really wide, right? You want to make sure, in the beginning it's fine, right, because we're using light weight, but as you progress, as you get into heavier and heavier weights, we want to make sure that we're always landing just underneath our shoulders. Right? That's where our power is going to come from. The further I step out, now if we get into powerlifting, that's a different subject, and that has to do more with leverage and angles. We can talk about that later. When we talk about these athletic movements, the wider I step out, the more I have to push in, right, before I can get back underneath my shoulders. And that's where my power is going to come from. You ever coached a basketball player to jump from out here? I never have. No. Right? Okay, so number one. Number two is you're going to see a lot of people do a big arm pull with this. And what that means is, I'm going to step to this side here so you can kind of see me from the side. We're not going to let our hips finish before I start this movement, right? Remember, this is a hip and leg drive movement. This isn't a big upright row, right? The upright row is important, sure, but again, just to get the cross-section of muscles we're dealing with. Way more here as opposed to up here. So what we'll see with a big arm pull is maybe the hips are finishing about here, right? And then they're going to start this movement. So we want to make sure that this looks, hips finish, right? We transfer all that potential energy from our legs into the bar before we start with the upper body and the upper pull. You will see a lot of people turn into this big reverse curl kind of thing where the bar really starts to travel away from the body. We want to keep the bar as close to the body and as straight as the bar path as possible. I would absolutely suggest getting a little coaching with this as well. Come and see Hatsuei or myself and we'll brush you up on some of the techniques. As an athlete, if you're looking to change your explosivity as an athlete, if you're looking to get into Olympic lifting, this is where you start.